10 Tampa Bay's Evan Closky gives me his thoughts on Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, as well as his free agent running back picks that would fit with the Buccaneers. Then we're each going to give you one draft prospect that we would like to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers take in the upcoming draft. Let's dive in.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bucs Nation, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, hosted by me, James Yarko, usually joined by David Harrison, but you guys know how we roll on Wednesdays. I'm joined by 10 Tampa Bay's Evan Closky. David and I. That's right. David and I, of course, you can find our written stuff as we are writers for SB Nation's Bucs Nation over at bucsnation.com. Free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. We thank you for making this your first listen or first watch of the day. If we're not on here, we're on Twitter at JYarko_Bucks, at eClosky WTSP, at DHarrison82. The show is at Locked On Bucs, and of course, at Bucs_Nation. Once again, thank you for making us your first listen or first watch every day. Evan, we are continuing our positional series here on the Locked On Bucs podcast. We've talked quarterbacks, we've talked wide receivers, we've talked tight ends. Let's continue this week. My favorite position, the underappreciated, undervalued, underpaid, because they have a very short shelf life, running backs. On yesterday's episode, David and I dove in to some free agent running backs that we would like to see the Bucs go after. We're going to get your take on those. But first, David and I talked about the futures of Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. So let's start with that, because I want to get your take on these. And let's start with the top dog, right? Playoff Lenny, Lombardi Lenny, Ray J Lenny, Indy Lenny,
Four Tutty Lenny,
all the Lennys.
all the
would love to see
mice and men Lennys.
Yeah, not those Lennys.
Some literature humor right there.
Yeah, I got it. I shout out to any of our listeners or watchers that got it, but also of Mice and Men Lenny got himself in a little bit of trouble. Let's not lump.
That's true. That's just more of the character versus the actual delving into. We're not going to talk about what Lenny did in the book.
yeah. Let's focus on Bucca Lenny, and what is your take on his pending free agency? How you see that kind of shaking out? I think if the Bucs are going to bring back one of these two guys that we're going to talk about, my thoughts is they'll find a way to keep Leonard Fournette. But what's your stance on it?
I mean, Ronald Jones is gone. Like, he is so gone. Like, that season ended and that dude was halfway to a different state. The marriage never worked. Even last year when Ronald Jones got some run, Bruce Arians loved putting Ronald Jones into the doghouse. And it was very clear that Leonard Fournette had a longer leash this year than Ronald Jones. Even if you go back to, I believe, the Cowboys game, right? Ronald Jones makes a turnover, then Leonard Fournette makes a turnover, but it's Lenny who gets to go right back into the game and figure it out versus Ronald Jones, who sat the rest of the way. And I'm sure that Ronald Jones wants no part of the Buccaneers, especially with how this season went and how he was kind of thrown by the wayside. So that's part of competition. That's just the way it goes sometimes. And, no hard feelings. And, he did some good work here in Tampa Bay. But Ronald Jones will probably seek an opportunity elsewhere. And I think that's probably best for both parties involved. Leonard Fournette would be the most desirable option to return. And as long as nobody throws a bag at him, I think he will be back. I think the Buccaneers have a great thing going with Lenny. You have to recognize that he's probably not going to be healthy for all 16 games. That hamstring injury is something that's been reoccurring his entire life, honestly. So you don't want to overpay for him. That's why I reiterate that there's going to be a line drawn in the sand with the salary cap and their payroll and what they're willing to give Lenny. But, for $3 million, $3.5 million, if they're able to get him at that price, I think you're going to see Leonard Fournette back. And what that does is it kind of allows Tampa Bay to kick the can on using an asset in the draft and maybe focus elsewhere. And you can probably string together a decent running back group. You probably still have to draft a running back, but the importance of that running back is now put towards the end of the draft where you can still find value versus maybe going up a bit higher and using a third or a fourth where you can probably maybe use that on the defensive side of the ball, a tight end. So, there's that trickle-down effect. But I love Lenny. I think the city loves Lenny. I think it was a great marriage coming off after whatever he went through in Jacksonville. And he knows that Bruce Arians is going to give him the rock on all 3 downs. I mean, what's a better position than that, especially for a guy who was so salty in the first go-around, when he came here with Tampa Bay and felt like he wasn't getting the playing time that he deserved. The fact that he earned that playing time and was able to be a 3-down back, I'm sure he doesn't want to leave if he doesn't have to. But if someone's going to pay him, he's got to go because running backs need to make their money whenever they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know last week, you and I both referenced some of these spot track market value estimations. David and I mentioned it on yesterday's episode. They're estimating that Leonard Fournette's average annual value, market value, is going to be about $6.1 million per year. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if he gets that, it's probably not going to be with the Buccaneers, right? But in today's day and age, it's also hard to find running backs having the opportunity to make that kind of money, especially when you take a look at some of the most successful teams in the postseason this year and the amount of money that their running back has cost them against the salary cap. It's a position that teams seem to be drafting just every year to have a constant rotation of guys. Some guys work, some guys don't. For the Buccaneers, that hasn't really been a position that has worked out in the Jason Light era as far as who they've drafted. Now, you have, and now his name escapes me, Jeremy Mcnichols. He's found a little niche in Tennessee, or he did last season.
He did, yeah. He kind of got waived and then brought back. He was kind of lost some steam there this year.
Ronald Jones, not great his first couple of years. Then in 2020, almost 1,000 yards. And then 2021, we're right back to kind of the first and second year Ronald Jones. So I don't know. Maybe there is a market there for Leonard Fournette to come in and be the veteran guy, the lead guy for a team. Or maybe, like you said, he's enjoying his role. He's enjoying his time in Tampa. And like I mentioned on yesterday's podcast, if they're relying on a Blaine Gabbert, if they're relying on a Kyle Trask to come in and be the quarterback, then Leonard Fournette knows that he's going to be the focal point of the offense. He's going to get a lot of touches, both as a running back and as kind of that check down guy. He's proven that he can be a 3-down back. He's proven that he can be a threat out of the backfield to catch passes. So I don't know. It might work out. I hope it works out, but I just think that the money is probably going to be somewhere else for him.
Probably. But, don't discount the Bucs maybe coming at him with like a 2-year deal with a third void year and manipulating a way for him to come in, especially if the Buccaneers have a quarterback in their back pocket who they bring in and makes this team an immediate winner once again. So, it all depends on whether we're in the reload mode or we're in the win now mode. And as you and I have mentioned, a couple weeks ago, and ever since Tom Brady retired, the offseason starts with the quarterback decision, because I do not think this team can make the decisions that they need to make until they know who is behind center, because that ultimately determines whether you need to pay a Leonard Fournette. Do you need to draft more win now type players or developmental players? I mean, there are so many question marks, and the ability for this team to win another Super Bowl hinges on who is taking snaps behind whoever is going to snap them the ball, because we don't know that answer either.
Yeah. Well, and we know that a lot of those discussions are going to be hammered out in Indianapolis in a couple of weeks they're kind of not supposed to, but we all know that it happens anyway, right? There's no such thing as tampering. This stuff happens all the time. It's just,
I like how we have legal tampering.
Right.
Hey,
so can't we just
on March 14th, we allow for you all to tamper.
Yeah.
Then on March 16th, now we get started.
Yeah, even though you all have been tampering since Mobile, let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah,
and look, here on the Locked On Bucs podcast, football season never ends, but real football season might be over. But basketball is in full swing for both pro and college. Shout out my University of Illinois Fighting Illini dominating the Big Ten. But for all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, all the way down to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, your podcasts, and your news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, all the way to Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. Bet online, where the game starts. Segment 2 here of the Locked On Bucs podcast. We thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or first watch every day. On yesterday's episode, if you haven't listened to that, go back, check it out. David and I are giving plenty of our thoughts, but we each gave a free agent running back that the Buccaneers could pursue if Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones both walk. For me, it was San Francisco 49ers running back Raheem Spicy Mostert. And for David, it was the beleaguered and unseated Marlon Mack, who was a player that he and I both pounded the table for a very long time when he was entering the NFL. And we even reminisced about the fact that Buccaneers trade up into the back end of I believe it was the third round. And we all thought, this is it. This is the Marlon Mack pick. No, it was Kendall Beckwith, who played well until he suffered an unfortunate career-ending injury in an automobile accident. But there is the possibility that the Buccaneers explore kind of that bargain basement, low risk, high reward free agency deal for a running back, so they don't have to use draft capital. They're not tying up $5-6 million a year, whatever the cost may be for one of these big names. So, Evan, I know you have a couple of free agent running back options that you're a big fan of. Who is your number one guy heading into free agency?
I like the Marlon Mack one only because it's a triple crown of local prospect or a local player. Grew up here, went to school here, and would play here. So,
I'm going to jump in real quick because now I'm just starting to feel insulted because last week you praised both of David.
No, let me say that's so true. It's so funny you say. I'm only saying that solely for the local. There's no deeper analysis there.
It's official. Evan has to be doing these shows with David because he hates all of my opinions. That's what we've learned.
Honestly, there's so many darts. I mean, we can all throw out like tons of names here, and it's not going to matter. I don't actually have a personal opinion on the Marlon Mack pick. I just like that he's the triple threat of a local product. But for me, here are my thoughts. First off, I do believe they're going to draft a running back. So that is something that is necessary, and it will make sense who I say my draft prospect is when we get there. My two guys, and it all depends on what type of back they get, because you're going to need two. This isn't just a one running back sort of deal. They need to sign two guys. They didn't just lose Fournette, Ronald Jones, but they also lost Giovanni Bernard, who they can easily bring back again, by the way, who I thought did really well down the stretch when he came back from injury, actually. David Johnson is a guy I'll mention. We mentioned Spot Track before, and he'll probably cost $1 million, $1.5 million for the year. And he's a veteran guy on a team full of veterans who have been there, done that. He's obviously towards the tail end of his career. I'm sure he wants to be on a winner, so he would probably do whatever is necessary to be on the Buccaneers. And he would
Bruce Arians.
Exactly. And on top of that, I was going to say the Bruce Arians familiarity. And on top of that, he's a third down back. He's not a guy who is, you're going to run out there and run between the tackles, but he still is going to log you 30 to 40 catches per season. I mean, he's been very consistent as a pass catcher. So when it comes down to somebody you want in that 2-minute drill and somebody who could fill in as a lead back in case there's an injury at a very cheap cost, who has been there before, David Johnson, I think, checks all the boxes. If you want to take a risk, and I say risk in italics because the money wouldn't necessarily be the risk; it would just be more of an unknown. Another local product, Ernest Johnson, somebody who was really buttoned up there in Cleveland behind Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and the flashes we got when those two guys. I mean, Hunt had an injury. I think Chubb had a COVID deal, and we were able to see him for a couple of games there. And man, did he look good. He looked explosive. And I think given more opportunity, he could be something special. So I like those guys, right? You can bring into Ernest Johnson. You can bring in David Johnson. You have a first and second down back. You got a third down back. And you probably bring in one more. You have a running back from the draft. My pick in the draft, I would not pick if those are the two that were brought in. I would take a more first and second down running back as a backup to Ernest. But I like that 1-2 punch. It's there's certainly risk involved because Ernest Johnson can be a nothing burger, but behind that offensive line, I think he can eat.
Yeah, I like the Ernest Johnson pick a lot. He, like you said, when he had the opportunity, he showed that he can be that reliable, if nothing else, that first and second down back. David did bring up David Johnson, just kind of threw that name out. We didn't dive into him too much, but it does make a lot of sense. It is that pass catching back role, somebody that can take some snaps at the running back position if need be, familiar with the offensive system, familiar with the head coach. I don't remember if he was there with Byron or not when Byron was part of the staff. I can't remember exactly when it was that David Johnson left and
I want to say it was after.
I want to say it was after too, but I'm not sure if maybe that was the year that Byron was kind of interning before he officially became a coach. Either way,
maybe he was there. I forget, but there's definitely the relationship there. I think David Johnson's a home run if you bring back Leonard Fournette. I think that's
a solid move for sure. Yeah, that gives the Bucs somebody that complements Lenny, that can fill in, spell him a little bit. And you would probably see him take a similar amount of snaps, if not maybe a little bit less than what Ronald Jones did in 2021. So it's not going to eat into Lenny's production, very much, if at all. And it's a really solid scheme fit. So I like both of those picks a lot. I'm really interested to hear who you have as your draft prospect. Mm-hmm. And I know you're going to be interested in mine the same way that we are all interested in trying the white chocolate covered cookies and cream Built Bar, because it's this time of year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but I am sticking with trying to eat a little bit healthier. I'm making lunch at home, not hitting the drive-through as much, but when I want a snack, when I'm taking Becca to hockey practice or whatever it is, need a little something, I'm grabbing a Built Bar. And have you tried the Puffs? The Puffs are fantastic. They're all marshmallowy and they're so good. They're also covered in 100% real chocolate. All Built Bars are covered in that chocolate, Puffs included. They're low calorie, high protein. You can replace your candy bars with a Built Bar, and they're better than a typical candy bar because those are like in the 200 to 300 calorie range. Built Bars, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. There's mint brownie, coconut almond, peanut butter brownie. So many flavors, and they're always coming out with new limited time flavors. So you have to check built.com often to see what the latest flavor is. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, reverse engineer. Let's make it healthy and delicious. Go to built.com. use promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Wrapping things up here on a wonderful Wednesday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. James Yarko, Evan Closky on Twitter at @JYarko_Bucs, at @eClosky WTSP. On tomorrow's episode, David is going to do a deeper dive into the running back draft prospects, but Evan and I are going to drop a couple of names that we like heading into the 2022 NFL draft that we think would be solid fits with the Buccaneers. Evan, I'm going to defer to you, good sir. I would like to hear who your draft prospect is, and I'm going to laugh really, really hard if we have the same guy. I don't think we will, but I'll laugh pretty hard.
First off, I'm really excited to hear what David's got to say because there are a lot of running backs in this draft. I don't think there's necessarily a star in this draft, but there's a lot of guys, from the second round to the sixth, who can really make an impact on a lot of teams. Notable mentions I want to say of guys who did not make my top spot for the Bucs. I love Max Borghi out of Washington State, a guy I was able to watch in person when I covered them. A guy I've watched from afar. He played in the Mike Leach air raid system for a little bit, then went to the run and shoot, runs really low to the ground, probably it is a little faster than what he seems, but he's a really tough tackle, and he's also a 3-down back. He's a guy that can catch the ball and run the ball. Another guy who can do that, Sincere McCormick out of UTSA, a guy that just completely obliterated Conference USA out of San Antonio, stayed local from day one, broke every record that place has ever set. He's a winner and a dude that's still kind of on an upward trajectory of where his game is going because he really was an unheralded recruit out of Judson High School, a powerhouse there in San Antonio. So two guys I was able to watch up close in person, but I am going to stay local, and I'm going to pick Damian Pierce because if I have Leonard Fournette, I need a third down guy who is going to block, and I love this dude as in pass pro. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but whether it was Brady or Blaine Gabbert, I don't care. Having somebody back there who can protect the quarterback and just block and take care of that business, having that security blanket, especially if the Buccaneers lose a Ryan Jensen and an Alex Kappa, I think that makes their protection even that more better. Than what they already are. And you kind of solidify the pocket without necessarily investing in another offensive lineman, and you can probably figure it out, especially if Hainsey moves over to center, fills in, and then, you can find a guard, you can bring Stinney in, whatever it might be. But I think everything can kind of fill itself out. So Damian Pierce has got a mean streak. He's a guy that I think will push his teammates. Gator fans who usually hate all their players, they love Damian Pierce. So that's my pick. Damian Pierce, a guy you'd probably select in the 4th or the 5th round.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think he would add a little something to this team. The direction that I'm going, and look, just prepare to cringe, David. I'm talking to you. I've poured a lot of love over some Ohio State Buckeyes through the draft process over the years. It's time to pour some love
Haskins
on a guy who plays for a school where I will be this weekend, a guy who will haunt Buckeye fan dreams for a very long time. And yes, Hassan Haskins out of Michigan, 6'1", 225, 4.5 40. This is a guy you can get late day 2, early day 3, and he can come in and immediately be your first and second down guy. Over 2,300 career rushing yards. Over 1,300 of those came this past season. 30 touchdowns, 20 came this past season. For his career at Michigan, he averaged over 5 yards per carry, and a late bloomer, something that can continue to develop, continue to improve, but all of a sudden, Last year, he started getting the ball thrown to him. Only 18 receptions, only 131 yards, but it was a facet of his game that they started to incorporate a little bit, started to nurture, started to help him develop that. And that's something that can continue into the pros. I'm not saying that he's a third down back right out of the gate, but that can be your first and second guy. And he would, be complemented well by a David Johnson who comes in free agency. I love the way Haskins run. He's so aggressive and he's so quick and he's so smart. I would love to see him be in the backfield for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next year if Lenny is no longer an option.
So I really like Haskins. He was rated phenomenally by Pro Football Focus. Mm-hmm. My only question mark with Haskins, and I'm doing it simply as just to provide the other side of things.
Sure.
He played behind just a monstrous offensive line there at Michigan. Just guys who bulldozed and truck sticked the opponent. Life was pretty easy for him at times running behind those guys. So with the Buccaneers, I don't hate that pick because they have an offensive line where it's going to be the same deal. So that, for other teams who aren't as stout up front, I would worry if he'd be as creative without the people in front of him doing their jobs as well as he's used to them being. But overall, he's a really solid selection. And when I mentioned just how deep this draft is and guys who aren't necessarily stars, but somebody who can come in and play day one and be very effective, he is right up there in that clump of people, as you mentioned, that day two, day three-ish type deal.
Yeah, I think the return on investment that you could get, again, and you nailed it, if you're the Buccaneers getting Haskins at that spot, I think the ROI there is going to be pretty massive. But you're right. He does need some help up front. He needs a solid offensive line, which again, if Kappa leaves, you would hope that the Jensen returns. We're going to get into offensive line next week. But if you have Jensen back and you put Stinney in there, that's still a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. If both of those guys leave and you have Hainsey and you have Stinney, I'm confident that they would remain close to the top 5, if not still in the top 5. So he would have a real nice line to run behind. And again, I'd be interested to see the continued development of his pass catching abilities, but having him in on first and second down, I would be real confident in the Buccaneers run game moving forward. Evan, I think that's going to wrap up things on the running back position. I jumped the gun last week. Last week, we got done talking about the tight ends, and I was like, oh, next week we're diving into the trenches, talking offensive and defensive line. No, I forgot about running backs. So next Wednesday, you and I are going to be discussing the offensive and defensive line, some openings that could be popping up there for the Buccaneers this offseason. But of course, let all the fine folks out there know where they can find everything that you're doing about not just the Bucs, but we got the Tampa Bay Lightning absolutely just destroying people. We have baseball that's kind of still a sport, maybe. And it comes back to
tough
the area.
Tough scene. But yeah, you can head to TampaBay.com. We got all your local sports covered, including the Buccaneers continuously throughout the offseason. Remember, circle March 14th to 16th. That's sort of when deals are going to start happening officially, even though, as you mentioned, behind the scenes will start going on. At Closky, WTSP on Twitter, at Closky Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. Hit me up. Love interacting. Just be kind. Be nice. And we'll have fun. So, but yeah, 10tampabay.com. And right now, we just got Bolts and the Rowdies in March. But right now, it's just Bolts. And they are, doing their thing.
They are taking care of business and getting ready to head to Nashville to play an outdoor game, which will be very, very fun. Mm-hmm. But we want to thank all of you for making today's episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast your first listen or first watch every day. Now make your second listen to Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It is free and available on all platforms. Check out everything David and I are doing over at BucsNation.com. Make sure you're following along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarko_Bucs, at DHarrison82, at Closky, WTSP, and at Bucs_Nation. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, be good to one another. We thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.